Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored with Steve Taplin. Welcome to Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm your host, Steve Taplin, 25 years serial tech entrepreneur. My new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. I actually have a demo copy ready. It comes out this month after some final edits. This is my story of having 30 ventures with 20 failures and 10 wins. The common element of every company I create is I always do custom software to create efficient internal operating systems, to create a unique client experience, and to raise enterprise value. I'm now the CEO of Sonatify Technology, a top-tier custom nearshore software development company. Today, we are joined by Andy Elmhorst out of Panama City, Florida. Andy is a seasoned tech exec, over 3 decades of experience with product and strategy across multiple industries. He's had senior engineering roles at Amazon and Pearson. He is a self-taught engineer with a founder's mindset. Andy, welcome to the show.
Hey, great to be here, Steve.
Andy, give our listeners a 1 to 2 minute journey of your career and what's brought you to where you are today.
Yeah, I have humble roots. I won't spend too much time, but pretty long career. I started in ed tech as basically a help desk technician and moved my way up into software engineering. This was back in the late 90s during the Y2K era.
Okay, so you didn't self-teach yourself COBOL, did you?
No, Vox Pro, though.
Okay.
I started doing Vox Pro Visual Basic back in the day. And
man, Andy, we're both aging ourselves now.
Yeah, I look at, there's a lot we could talk about with regards to like programming languages. But yes, I eventually jumped over into the startup space, worked at a startup that got acquired. That's how we got acquired by Pearson. At Pearson, I moved into various like leadership roles, eventually became VP of architecture for the higher ed business unit, which was a lot of fun. After that, I went to Amazon, worked in Amazon Web Services as a solutions architect, went to Prime, worked as a software engineer, rebuilt the Prime Day page, whole kind of big story behind that. And then more recently, I came out of Amazon as an engineer working in the e-commerce space for another startup. I left that startup recently after spending about a year as the CTO. And now I'm doing fractional work and also writing a lot of code. So having a lot of fun these days.
Gotcha. And Andy, I'm a big believer that with the rate of change of technology, generative AI has changed the game. And, we can't even talk in terms of even months or years. Tools are changing daily. Do you feel somebody can be an effective CTO if they're not still doing some hands-on code today to stay sharp on the rapid pace of change? What's your view on that?
I think so. The CTO role varies so much across company size. So I don't want to say every CTO has to be technical and hands-on, but I do think hands-on is a big plus, especially for CTOs of small to medium, so startup to mid-sized companies. I do think I am a strong believer in hands-on technologists. In fact, when I hire leaders, I also look for that hands-on mentality. I look for someone who is not too far removed from the code. They're willing to do code reviews, or actively involved in doing coding on side projects, even if not doing it day to day. So I'm a strong believer in being hands-on tech. And I do think as a CTO, it gives you a lot more credibility when you're in the room with your teams. Obviously, you can operate in more of like just a pure management role. That does work. But there's nothing like having a hands-on, technically deep CTO in the room to really, I think, sharpen the conversation.
And, so I agree with you wholeheartedly. And when you look at, the tech space has been such a volatile environment for the past couple of years. CTOs, CIOs have an unfair disadvantage against them because they're blamed for everything. And I am a big believer that with the rapid rate of change, to command the respect from your teams, to be able to properly educate non-technical C-level leaders, board members, investors, that you still have to have that hands-on player coach mentality. And I think a lot of the jobs that are being eliminated are the ones where they're not player coach. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, I don't know about I can't speak to jobs being eliminated, but I can definitely tell you companies today are hiring for hands-on leaders. I've seen that. I have been both interviewing for and interviewing with leaders that are looking for jobs, and hands-on, looking for someone who's actually deep in tech is definitely high demand these days. And so, yeah, completely agree with that.
I agree. I agree. So you're doing fractional CTO services. From your vantage point, what types of companies benefit most from a fractional CTO and which ones don't?
I think the most obvious customer for a fractional CTO is a startup, and particularly a startup that doesn't have a technical co-founder. And I have run into these startups where there's a founder, maybe they have money and they're bootstrapping and they think, okay, I can just hire a team overseas or whatever, and I can just like give them the idea and they'll build it. I have run into these companies and they definitely, like with that mindset, are missing the importance of having a solid engineering leader in order to build a company, especially if you're building a company that's based on a tech platform. So that's one thing that I've seen. So startups without a solid, seasoned co-founder who's deep in tech definitely need a fractional CTO. And it's a perfect use of company money to pay for part of that experience and get some real advice in how to build your tech platform.
Now, what companies do you think aren't the right fit for a fractional CTO?
While bigger companies probably have less need of fractional CTO advisory services, or companies that maybe aren't based on tech. So I think like the sweet spot would be companies where tech is important, but there isn't a strong tech leader. And maybe there's either not the budget to hire a CTO. That would be like the perfect fit. So maybe it's a company that's got a VP of engineering, but the VP doesn't quite have maybe the tech depth that's needed to kind of see above the horizon, work at the executive level. So that would be the target customer profile for fractional work.
As we're in 2025 and AI is the buzzword said every fifth word out there on anything you say, I'm definitely seeing that regardless of the industry, every company is focused on at least making sure they're tech enabled. You know, I'll see a lot of companies that may have a CIO that is not necessarily experienced on the software and custom software side and can't take the company in the direction that the founders or the PE firm or the board wants, where they're often looking for outside consulting on what they can do better. Have you encountered any of those who may have a CIO that they realize maybe doesn't have the CTO type skills to take them to the next level?
Yeah, I have. I'm working with a company right now. It's basically a 150-year-old enterprise retail company. So you can think of lots of legacy, lots of history, premium brand, and going through, I would say, some very important and structural changes. Absolutely. If you think about a company like that that's been around that long, there's going to be a lot of legacy, not only tech debt, but also skill sets within the company, across the company. And so when something like AI comes like a wave and just kind of comes across the bow, these sorts of companies are going to need some help, I believe. It's hard as an enterprise software company of that kind of vintage to be agile like a startup. And actually, this may involve like upskilling teams. It may involve like changing how processes work, finding advantages of using AI internally as well as externally in the products. So I think you're right there. That would be another ideal target customer for fractional work.
It's kind of funny with the uncertainty in the economy, venture capital and private equity not flowing as well to typical companies. But if you throw the word AI in front of it, whether it's boards, CFOs, budgets, or even getting investment, all of a sudden it's kind of changed the game. I like to laugh, Andy, because I think we could put 10 experienced tech leaders in a room and ask them each what AI is, and we'd get 10 different answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, AI is definitely the new buzzword. You and I have seen lots of buzzwords over the past 20 years. I think, and obviously it's big, it's monumental. The change that is coming is monumental. It will impact not only, the thing that this is kind of like my own personal observation. I feel like within tech, we're doing a lot of navel gazing and looking at like inward, like how is AI going to affect us, our jobs as whether you're a software engineer, and also like a lot of the tooling, a lot of the startups are focused on like how many different AI development tools do we actually need? There's like 500 startups out there right now building AI
There's a
development
lot of them.
tools. But there's like this whole world outside of the software and tech bubble that we know is going to be impacted by AI. And like, why aren't we building solutions for the world outside of tech? That's my big question.
And that is a good one. So, Andy, how do you spot if you see a startup that's maybe overdue for tech leadership, but they don't realize it? How do you spot that, and how do you hit them over the head that they need help in that area?
Well, it's usually pretty obvious. I mean, there's one stat that I think there's probably a couple of stats, but these would be like your HR department probably knows. There's attrition rates, there is net promoter scores internally. I think like engineers will vote with their feet, and most of the good and best software people that I've worked with want to work for high class engineering organization that goes all the way to the top. And so I think you can see it by the quality of the people that and whether they're choosing to stay or leave.
If you were to meet a CEO or COO or even CFO, how would you smack them over the head that they need help, whether it's fractional CTO or more tech leadership? How would you approach them?
So first of all, I'm not a great salesperson, quite honestly. So like I usually look to see what are the problems that the leader is facing. Every tech leader has problems and challenges. And, you know, I think what AI does is it kind of just amplifies existing fear. So like I already am wondering if my engineering team is producing what they should be producing. That's like every CEO's fear. At least like I think CEOs think about this. And so they look at their CTO or their VP of engineering and they say, okay, is my engineering team productive? Now, all of a sudden on LinkedIn, every single day, you see all of these posts about people vibe coding stuff, Shopify saying, we're not going to hire any more people until we prove we can't do it with AI, like all these different things.
Yep.
And the CEO, all of a sudden, now his fear level has gone from like a 10 to like a 99. And the CTO or his head of tech is like clearly in the spotlight here. And I've been in that seat a couple of times. You know, the CEO comes and says, what are we doing with AI? What aren't we doing with AI? Like, why aren't we doing X? Why aren't we doing what this person does? So I do think like adoption of AI, if a CEO has or CFO has that question, I would like to be able to give them reasoned answers from experience of things that I've done, things that my colleagues, the collaborators that I work with are doing in the space. And I do think that that's one angle. I think another angle would be like not only looking inward, but looking outward, like what are the market opportunities for AI? And so one thing that I would love to do, I haven't had anybody bite on this yet, is to say, listen, I would love to build this into like some of our public facing products, but like I don't have the team to do it. Could you come and like build some prototype stuff for us? So I do think that's another use case for fractional work.
Gotcha. All right. So when you start a company as a fractional CTO, you start working with them. What does the first 30 days usually look like?
The first 30 days looks like basically becoming a person that I never thought I would be, which is a salesman. Knocking on doors, networking, reaching out to people. I have talked to so many people over the last 30 days, people that I haven't talked to in like 20 years. The thing that I've learned is there's so much interest. There's so much interesting things going on in the space, even though there's a lot of challenges right now with the job market, with the economy, with like various things, funding for startups, all these things, unless you use AI in your funding strategy. But there's just a lot of really cool work going on. I just recently met with someone who I hadn't talked to in 20 years, but I pinged him with like an email. He responded and I said, why don't we meet up? I met not even a tech person. He's just working on the most interesting problem that intersects with a lot of my interests and things. And he needs a tech person to help him build it. And so it's been just a lot of fun reaching out. But that's what I've been doing for the last 30 days, just talking to a lot of people.
Now, when somebody hires you as a fractional CTO, what does the first 30 days look like as far as what you're doing within that company, what your goal deliverables are?
Yeah. So the interesting thing is usually what we try to do is map out like what are the key things that the company needs that I can help with, and try to use more of a deliverables focused, outcome based compensation model. But I can also do like just a straight up like X number of dollars per month model as well. But what I've done recently is come up with more of an outcomes based model. So I'll help you with X, I'll help you with Y, I'll help you with Z. And those are all milestones, and we can track those milestones. So initially it starts with identifying like, what can I really help you with? What's your biggest problem right now? And sometimes, at least in the cases that I've seen, usually it's me figuring that out by talking to the team and then going back to the CEO and saying, here's what I think you need. Here's how I can help.
Gotcha. What are there typical deliverables within the first 30 days, like clearly defining their technical roadmap or identifying warning areas or critical areas they need to look at? Or is each engagement so unique that it's all over the board?
No, I don't think it's all over the board. It typically involves three different things. Well, at least this is what I'm seeing right now. One is they might realize I don't have the tech leadership I need. And so I need your help in helping me find the right person to be the leader. And so I've done some of that. That's one potential outcome, is help you hire XYZ position to help you lead your organization. The other use case would be like architectural or deep dive assessment. Look at the current stack. What are the challenges? Talk to both the CEO, the product people, engineering teams, do a deep dive, open up the hood, look underneath, and just figure out like what is actually going on. Where's the tech debt? Is this thing that's being built, is it actually the thing that the CEO thinks is being built? How's it going to scale? So really doing a tech assessment. And then the third piece, which I love doing anytime I come into a senior leadership role, I like to create a tech strategy, kind of like a North Star document that says, here's the context of the business. Here's what we're trying to achieve. Here's the culture that we endeavor to build. Here are the ways that we're going to work together. And here's like where we need to head. And so that's another deliverable that I can produce.
Gotcha. So let's say a new startup comes and they have an idea and they need to build an MVP and they're bootstrapping. They need the MVP to wow investors so that they can build it out. What type of approach would you take with a company like that?
Yeah, I think it depends on if they have an engineering team or not. If they have an engineering team,
And let's assume they don't. They're bootstrapped. Let's say they're non-technical leaders who might say they understand how to build software, but really don't.
yeah, there are multiple phases of exploration when building a new tech platform. So the first thing I would ask them is, do you have a prototype? If you don't have a prototype, I would say, let's go and just use some of the, like the new AI tools are amazing for doing prototype work. So in 1 day, 2 days, 3 days of work with like Lovable, like we can actually stand up a complete end-to-end prototype of a lot of common like types of platforms. So like I would start with a prototype phase if they don't have that, and just do it with AI and just say like, let's just do it. If it's more like, okay, prototype, we already know what we want to build. We've already tested it. We already have customers. We have traction. We have adoption. Like we just need to figure out what the next phase is. I don't have a team. I think I would first of all gauge, do they have tech leadership? I think you need a tech leader to really do this well. And then from there, depending on their budget and what they might want to do, I think looking for nearshore or offshore resources can be a really good first step for a startup. It gives you better economies of scale. And I've had really good success finding good talent at lower cost with that model. But I do believe you do need strong leadership and maybe a couple of engineers that are very much closer to the company to kind of guide the direction. But that would be like my advice is like, what do you think about going near shore, onshore? And it really depends on what their ambitions are, because some companies, if you're in the Bay Area, you just want to hire Bay Area talent. That's what the ethos that you're trying to build. So like, depending on where you're at, what ethos you're trying to build, help them with the resourcing discussion.
Now, we were talking before the show about some current projects that you're working on right now. Please share with our audience what you can.
Yeah. So on the side, I've been bootstrapping my own AI platform. Really, for me, it's about scratching an itch, getting into coding. Although AI is doing a lot of the coding these days, and trying to make better sense of the AI stack. The AI stack is the new tech stack. So like it is not completely figured out yet, but there are definitely early signs of what's in that stack. Some ability to use, so if you're using an LLM on the back end, for example, like how do you store memory? How do you manage what sorts of prompts you're giving at the LLM? How do you observe the output and make sure that the AI is doing the right thing? It's not hallucinating. How do you evaluate what data it's using to make decisions, that sort of thing? So there's a lot of common elements there. There are a lot of companies building these sorts of solutions in the space, but what I'm looking at is many of the existing solutions that I've seen they all have an API. I'm looking at the small business use case of the professional, like maybe professional services or solopreneur type companies that could take advantage of AI, but don't have an engineering team. don't know the first thing about tech, but they have ideas about how they can use AI to scale their business. And so that's the idea I'm working on. I'm working specifically right now in the professional coaching space about potentially building solutions that will enable, if you think about someone like a coach, they've got expertly curated knowledge that they've built. They may have courses. They have a lot of information in their head. They are the core knowledge base. And a foundational LLM isn't going to have their knowledge. But if you think about what AI could do on top of being able to tap into that knowledge and enable someone to scale their business, I look at AI as kind of like a player. And it's something that you can use to enable scaling expertly curated and crafted knowledge. So that's the thing I'm building on the side. It's a lot of fun.
Cool. Now, in my opinion, if you're a software engineering professional, the ultimate goal is to become a CTO. It's taking that tech experience, bridging the gap between non-technical execs, and investors and leading teams. But with that, CTO is a pretty darn tough role, to say the least. If you had a friend or family member who wanted to be a CTO, what would you tell them? Run, don't do it.
Well, I would say, no, definitely head that direction if you're so inclined. I think if I were talking to, and I do talk to a lot of people who are just starting school or exiting school at this phase about tech and what to do. And the advice, so first of all, just the general advice is the need for tech talent is not going away in the AI age. I firmly believe the need for tech talent is going to increase. This is in alignment with the Jevons paradox. It's like you make something even like more powerful, you're going to need more people to build more powerful solutions.
And I agree with you wholeheartedly. And maybe the roles will shift a little bit, but demand's not going away.
Yeah. But for someone specifically looking to go into a CTO role, like, okay, I actually aspire to be a CTO. It just seems like a cool job. I think obviously you have to think through like what sort of work do you want to do? Because I think, in my opinion, so I can give you my opinion. There are like 7 different types of CEOs. I can't even list them off the top of my head, but like there are lots of different CEOs for different types of companies. But one thing that I think makes a great CTO is someone who is hands-on and technical and has an architectural bent. And I think so. The first career advice I would give an aspiring technologist is stay deep in the tech for as long as you can. Don't give in to the temptation to go into management too early, because I've seen that. And what you end up becoming is, because when you switch from being an engineer to being a manager, you actually are switching careers in many cases. Obviously, like, my advice would be to stay technical even if you're a manager, but a lot of times you're learning a whole new thing. You're learning how to engineer people and organizations. You're not learning how to engineer architectures and code. And so the key advice I would give anyone would be to stay in the tech for as long as you can. Try to get to a principal level or senior staff level role before you go into management. To me, you're going to be a much stronger candidate for a CTO type role if you have really strong technical chops. And that's how you earn those chops. You can't get those chops are only earned through experience. You can't get them for free.
Andy, what's one brutal lesson you wish you would have learned earlier in your career?
Yeah, I've learned a lot of lessons. I think
us older guys have our scars, our lessons learned. Sometimes you can't read it in a book or learn it in a class. You got to go through the school of hard knocks to figure it out.
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes that I made early on when I got into management was falling into this mindset of a misunderstanding of servant leadership. So, and the way it manifested for me several times was I trusted my leaders that I hired. So I was a senior leader, whether I was VP at one company or CTO at another company. I've repeated this mistake enough times that hopefully I have learned the lesson. But like, I firmly believe in trusting your leadership to solve problems in isolation without needing too much oversight. But what I've learned is that you can't delegate an ambiguous problem space to your directs. You have to be hands-on. And I think of it more as like a pure programming model, where if there's an ambiguous problem space that needs to be solved, you want one of your directors or VPs to handle that problem and to start building a solution. I can't just hand them my technical strategy document that I dreamed up and my 20-page PowerPoint and say, here's the vision, go build it. I have seen that crash and burn multiple times. And I don't think it's an effective model. I do think in an ambiguous problem space, the senior leader has to be hands-on and involved. And this is not micromanaging. I look at it as peer programming. You are working directly with one of your directs who you trust, but you're working together on the problem.
Great advice, Andy. Thank you so much for getting uncensored with us today. Excited to see how you continue to shape the next chapter of the tech industry at large. And that's it for this episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. I'm Steve Taplin. Stay bold, everyone, and keep building. That's a wrap. Another great episode of Software Leaders Uncensored. Thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. It's a lot of fun doing this show. I love talking with great tech leaders. As a side note, if you're interested, check out my new book, Fail Hard, Win Big. This is the story of how I built 30 companies, failed on 20, and turned 10 into multi-million-dollar wins. The common thread with all of them was custom software. Also, if you need software development help out there, my company, Sonatify Technology, we deliver world-class software development engineers out of Latin America. We have a solid track record of helping companies launch better products and faster. Thanks again for listening. Appreciate it and appreciate you.